The year is 1959. Faced with pressure from China's communist government, the Dalai Lama flees from Tibet under the cover of night, headed for India. Starting with the beginnings of China's invasion in Tibet, CIA officials had been keeping track of the situation.
As I understand it, and I'm not a political scientist, but the CIA's motive was largely concerned with either monitoring or stopping the spread of China in the upcoming decades.
As the Dalai Lama makes his way to relative safety in India, freedom fighters cover their tracks by demolishing the bridges they cross in order to stop any following Chinese forces. The bombs they use to detonate these bridges, however, are not of Tibetan origin.
China was going through some changes, and the CIA was monitoring those changes. And when they saw an uprising, in Tibet, they thought, well, perhaps we can help destabilize the situation and, have a presence there.
The CIA would continue to supply the Tibetan resistance with weapons and other supplies for over 10 years.
I met one guy, Alabama, 2 years ago. I think he's dead now. He's in mid-90s. He told me he used to go to the, Thailand, Burma, Thailand, to fly over the mountains to drop guns to the Tibetan guerrilla fighters.
But supplying the resistance with materials was not the limit of the CIA's efforts in the Tibetan resistance.
The training was in small arms, explosives, and also espionage.
Beginning in the 1950s, the CIA had already had their sights set on cultivating a resistance movement inside Tibet by training insurgents in warfare and espionage. The CIA's interest in Tibet related to the agency's interest in much of the East. The CIA was concerned with stopping the spread of communism through China's influence in the region. Their efforts became concrete in 1957, when the CIA first took Tibetan rebels to the remote U.S. Commonwealth island of Saipan, located in the Mariana Islands. There, the rebels underwent training in espionage and warfare, taking courses in such disciplines as Morse communications and paramilitary operations. The CIA would repeat this effort at another training site later on, this time within the U.S. Located in the U.S. in Eagle County, Colorado, Camp Hill was previously utilized by the military in World War II. It was now designated as a training ground for the Tibetan rebels. There, over the course of the next several years, the CIA would bring several groups of Tibetan men to train them in espionage and, taking advantage of the mountainous surrounding region, as paratroopers. These efforts supplied paratroopers that would support the resistance in Tibet for over a decade. But despite the effort put into the CIA's support of the resistance, by 1974, the CIA's operations had halted.
My first entry in my diary on arriving in Mustang was, I said, we are in the wrong place. What are we doing in the far west? I said, weren't the CIA looking at a map? We should have been in the far east, where Tibet, Burma, and China meet.
But I think, quite frankly, the United States did not know a lot about, Tibet, its culture, its management, and I don't know who their contacts were in Tibet. But I think more substantial support would have been given if Tibet had been recognized as an independent sovereign nation.
The United States' constant refusal to take a public stand against China left them unable to provide Tibet with more concrete support. The U.S. instead decided to begin building a relationship with China. And at this point, the CIA's efforts were put to a stop. In the end, all CIA efforts in Tibet simply dissolved. In the present day, the relationship between the U.S. and Tibet remains on the same uncertain grounds.